series, as everybody now obviously knows, against the Rockets. After the MRI confirms yesterday he has a strained calf. It was probably, all things considered, the best news they could have gotten. But he's not in Houston, and he will not play no matter how far this series goes. Here was Steve Kerr yesterday with his thoughts on the injury.
Our guys are they're giants, as I said last night.
That's not what you said.
You're paraphrasing now.
I am paraphrasing. They are, freaking giants. But they're champions, and I think there's an advantage to have championship experience and to have rings on your fingers. This group will never be doubted. This group has nothing to prove. So there's a freedom that comes with that. And, we're obviously, being hit with injuries, which is part of it. It's one of the reasons it's so hard to win a championship, because things like this happen. And, they generally happen to every team at some point. And so, we've been hit with injuries in the past during this run. This is probably the hardest we've been hit with DeMarcus and Kevin. But the challenge is here. It's right there in front of our guys, and we just have to win one game. So, let's go do it.
I tell you what, Vegas is not sure they can do it. The Warriors are now plus 140 to win the title at Westgate. That's their longest odds at any point since they signed KD. They would be an underdog in the finals against the Bucks without him, according to Vegas. But I want to hear from Rose Stradamus. Jalen Rose, again, standing by in L.A. We've got Game 6 tonight. You and the crew obviously will do countdown and everything else surrounding it. And what is your expectation here for the Warriors without Kevin Durant? Obviously, Steph played great the other night, but now when everyone has time to prepare for the change in the series, what do you expect to happen on the floor?
So for me, this series is a lot to unpack, because I felt like the Houston Rockets missed a golden opportunity to take Game 1. Anytime the Golden State Warriors are in an extended series versus the LA Clippers, and you get a chance to sleep in the Bay Area that Friday night, you got to take Game 1 on Sunday. They did not do that. However, I give them a lot of credit. Once they got down 2 games, I didn't feel like they'd win both games at home. In Game 5, when the Warriors lose KD, James Harden cannot take one field goal attempt the last 8 minutes of the game, and you lose without Kevin Durant. Yes, they're going into Game 6. I feel like the Houston Rockets find a way to play better on their home floor and get the victory. But at the same time, the Golden State Warriors have that championship pedigree playing on their home floor in Game 7 that Steve Kerr talked about. And how about this? For the Golden State Warriors, they've heard all year that Kevin Durant might leave. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green have heard all year that this has become Kevin Durant's team. How about this for motivation? Those guys want to go out and win the game in Game 6 without Kevin Durant to shut up all of the doubters and also to give KD a chance to rest. And this is a Golden State Warriors team that is so stacked. People forget KD and DeMarcus Cousins were starters in the All-Star game last year. And I still believe they're going to beat the Houston Rockets without both of those guys.
All right, so if that's the case, now let's spin it to the other side. Because, Jalen, how much time have we spent on this show, you and I, talking about James Harden and how brilliant he is in the regular season and how he has not matched that in the postseason. And now here it is on a silver platter. Here's your shot, James, to get through this team and the Warriors without Kevin Durant. If he doesn't, if they don't, what will the conversation be around the Rockets team and around Harden in particular?
It's going to be about a regular season style that the Rockets play. They've outclassed the Golden State Warriors from the three-point line, yet I still believe they're going to find a way to lose the series. And James Harden, while he has not been magnificent, he's gotten close to his season averages, but we're only seeing a version of Chris Paul. I was one of the people that felt like last year, if he was healthy, that the Houston Rockets would have advanced. Yes, the Golden State Warriors were missing Andre Iguodala as well, but he seems to be a shell of himself. But playing on their home floor, Eric Gordon, Austin Rivers, Clint Capella, P.J. Tucker not having to guard KD. I think the Rockets are going to be motivated. I think they'll still find a way to win on their home court. and it's going to be great theater for Game 7, but I'm not counting out the Splash Brothers, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala to close it out on their home floor in Game 7.
Yeah, Ryan, we were talking about it. To what degree do you think Harden's legacy rises and falls on what happens in the next 3 days?
I didn't know he'd be able to repair it after last playoffs, and he has because he was so ridiculous. So if it happens again, I mean, is no one going to vote for him for anything? You know, I mean, he's never going to make an all-star team. So something, you know, the other thing, too, is a lot of times people just made up their minds. And then even if they're wrong, they'll just make excuses for why they're still right.
And Woj, the other point on the Rockets is we keep referring to this as their last best chance. But the reality is if the Warriors are about to break up, then regardless of what happens, the Rockets, who will probably remain intact based upon contracts and things, their next best chance is probably next year.
That's right. But I do think that the fact that you have a chance to beat the Warriors in this golden era with this team that's going to be remembered among the very best in history. Again, nobody remembers in the 2016 Cleveland championship that, you know, Draymond was suspended and Steph Curry was hurt and wasn't himself. They just remembered an epic victory. And even without KD, Houston wins here and advances. It's more than just a conference semifinal win. I mean, like, James Harden doesn't go down in history just because he got to a conference final. I mean, if you want to be remembered as, if he's going to be a multiple-time MVP, you want to at least get to the NBA Finals with that Houston team. He did it early in his career, but I think beating this Golden State team has great value more than another conference semifinal you play in.
Feels like there's a lot at stake here. All right, guys, let's go to the Lakers here because I definitely want to make sure that we get the latest from Jalen on that. Frank Vogel is the latest candidate to interview for the Lakers head coaching position, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, seated to my right. Vogel flew out to L.A. yesterday, just a day after Ty Lue reportedly rejected a Lakers offer worth 3 years and $18 million. So, who exactly is Frank Vogel? Well, again, his most recent coaching stint came in Orlando for 2 years. Before that, a lot of success in Indiana, where he led the Pacers to the playoffs 5 times, 3 of those ending in losses to LeBron James and the Heat. He's also been an assistant in various places. So we know Frank Vogel. He's actually hosted the show with us on a number of occasions. But that doesn't feel like the biggest story going on right now by any means. Jalen, we all watched you last night. But for those in our audience who did not stay up late and watch, what do you think LeBron's mindset is and should be right now relative to the coaching situation?
He need to pick up the cell phone, call Jeannie Buss. If they don't hire the person that he would like them to hire to coach the basketball team over the next 3 years, he should ask to be traded. This has become a mockery, Greeny. This has become a mockery, Woj and Ryan. How about this for 360 degrees of separation? I'm in Los Angeles today. The fans are about to protest in front of Staples Center. That was about to happen to the New York Knicks a few years ago, and they panicked and overpaid one Phil Jackson to run the team so that those people wouldn't panic. The same Phil Jackson that had Kurt Rambis on the bench, who's now in interviews to interview coaches to come and be a part of the Los Angeles Lakers. This level of dysfunction is something I have not seen from this storied franchise. They have not made the playoffs since the late, great Dr. Jerry Buss passed away. And now all of a sudden, you're searching for a coach. You have an aging superstar in LeBron James. The draft is coming up. You have so many young players that you need to nurture. They need to understand the style of play going into next year. And you don't want to pay Tyronn Lue, a champion, 5 years to be the coach? Phil Jackson actually already set that market when he hired Derek Fisher for the first time. This guy's won a championship with LeBron James. He has all of the leverage, and he played with the Lakers. You think because he told you how much he loved the team that he was going to take a discount when he see Monty Williams get a 5-year deal? They fired Luke Walton and paying him, and he went to the Sacramento Kings and got a 5-year deal. And you're still not going to pay Tyronn Lue? This is just mind-numbing to me. I don't understand what's happening in Los Angeles Lakers land. I might just go IG Live and go and be a part of the protest this afternoon at 12.
Listen, I'm all on board for that. Here's the thing that we can't get to. What do you think LeBron is actually thinking right now? Because when the notion of him getting traded seems so ridiculously far-fetched, it's hard to even take into account. Every time it comes up, I see the smile on Woj's face. But what do you think he's thinking right now? What do you think he will do?
He's thinking what I've said on this fine program all year. that he has a better chance of getting an Emmy before he has a chance of getting a championship with the Los Angeles Lakers. That's what he has to be thinking. This is the first time that he's committed to a situation long-term in theory. He signed a 3-year deal with a player option for the 4th. And then all of a sudden, Magic steps down. They can't get a coach hired. What is going to happen with Brandon Ingram and his blood clot situation? The Los Angeles Clippers have become more of an attractive team because they have less dysfunction from top down, and then they made it to the playoffs and had a good showing. So they're not even the best team in their own market right now. There has to be a lot of things going on in LeBron James' head. We'll have to see how this plays out.
Well, LeBron knew who he was signing with, a general manager in Rob Pelinka who had not done the job, who had been an agent, and a president in Magic Johnson who had never run a team before. And you've seen in history with Magic, he'll start something and walk away from it. He did it in coaching. He's done it in other places. Like, there wasn't a track record of great stability and success with those guys, so you signed up for that. And to me, the issue for him, yes, coach is important, but what's more important is who's running the organization, who's making decisions on personnel, trades, drafting, setting the tone. The coach is disposable. You can always go get a new coach when your roster changes, your job becomes more attractive. The conversations, to me, for him to have with Jeannie Buss are about senior leadership. Like, whoever the coach is next year, it doesn't get them much closer to a championship. They need to change the roster, the environment, and a coach isn't doing that.
I get it, but Jalen, as a final thought from you, and we so appreciate you doing this early. I know you got all the late stuff last night and tonight again. But I have to believe whatever chance the Lakers had of getting one of the top-level free agents to come join LeBron, which we already didn't think was very good, all of this public just dysfunction and humiliation and people protesting in front of the arena, that can't help, right? I mean, if you're another superstar, you don't want any part of this.
Who are you going to talk to about coming to sign with the team? You're going to talk to Linda and Kurt Rambis? I never would have thought growing up watching the Lakers in the 80s that Kurt Rambis would have more power with the Lakers than Magic Johnson. How about that? And I've seen what he has been able to do as a head coach. I've seen him work with Phil Jackson as an assistant coach with the New York Knicks. That did not work. You cannot have him in the room and bringing in candidates to be the next head coach, and you're forcing a staff of assistant coaches on somebody like Tyronn Lue that has already won the championship with LeBron James as a head coach. That level of dysfunction is just unique to me.
Jalen, outstanding work, and we'll see you on Countdown tonight. Thanks so much, my man. And if you do IG, do it. Go IG Live the protest. We'll watch. I'm in. I mean, I'm 100% in. Thank you very much, Jalen Rose. We'll talk to you on Monday. Meanwhile, coming up here on Get Up, the Sixers force a Game 7. But is the process reaching a conclusion? Timmy Legler has that answer. And Stephen A. on the mess in Lakerland. What should LeBron do? What will he do? And what happens next? Answers to all those questions and more as we roll on. Get Up on ESPN. Meanwhile, if you are just waking up and joining us, the Sixers won their 5th game this postseason last night by double digits, their most in a single postseason in 37 years, beating Toronto last night, forcing a Game 7. And one of the keys for the Sixers, limiting the Raptors in transition. They outscored Toronto in transition for the first time in the series, holding the Raptors to just 15 transition points. And Joel Embiid did not shoot the ball particularly well. He was 5 of 14, but the Sixers did outscore the Raptors by 40 points with him on the floor. He played really well on the defensive end. For the series, the Sixers are plus 80 with Embiid on the court and minus 98 without him. Sometimes things aren't that complicated. He is the Sixers' leadoff hitter. When he goes, they go. Again, there are the numbers. Philly outscoring the Raptors by 80 and minus 97 with him off the floor. I could have sworn I just said that. Meanwhile, let's bring Tim Legler into the conversation. Look who it is. It's our old friend, Timmy Legs. It's been far too long since we've had a chance to chat with you. Tim, thank you so much for getting up early here for us. And let's talk about Joel Embiid, because while he obviously has played a huge factor and a huge role in this series, I know it's another player on the Sixers who stood out for you last night.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, Ben Simmons was under a tremendous amount of pressure. Coming off of that Game 5 performance The people in Philadelphia, the fans, the media, talk radio, you name it. It was all about Ben Simmons on the day off. And was he going to show some aggressiveness and just put an imprint on the game? And he came out with a different mentality. Still didn't take any shots outside the lane. He's just not ready to do that as an NBA player. But the one thing he did do is every time he got his hands on the ball early in that game, he tried to put his head down and turn the corner, get downhill, put pressure on the Toronto Raptors defensively. And he found some guys early that opened things up. And then he took advantage of his opportunities as a slasher, as a cutter. He posted up a couple of times and just basically showed up. That's all that the Philadelphia 76ers fans wanted to see. But his pace allowed guys to get involved. That even made Joel Embiid's night a little bit easier, although he still didn't look 100%. So I thought Ben Simmons, to me, it was all about mentality. From the time he showed up at that arena, he was going to play differently, and this is what he needs to do one more time in Game 7.
And so will he. There we are now, Game 7 in Toronto. What do we expect? Give me a sense of what you're looking to see on Sunday from both these teams.
Yeah, look, I think Ben Simmons is going to try to play that way. I think Joel Embiid will be better than he's been for most of this series. Even if he gives them what he gave them the other night in Game 6, I think they'll take that at this point because he's had some quiet nights in this series. For me, though, I think Game 7 is going to come down to one very simple factor. Are the Toronto Raptors role players and supporting cast going to make three-point shots? I thought they had probably 10, 12 really clean, good looks in the first three quarters of that game in Game 6, and they just couldn't knock down shots. And this is what you're on the floor to do. You're going to have to help out Kawhi Leonard, who has probably had about as good a six-game run to start a series as any player I've seen in any series. That's how good he has been. Pascal Siakam had the calf injury in the middle of the series, but he's back playing well again. So for me, it comes down to guys like Kyle Lowry, Serge Ibaka, Danny Green, Fred VanVleet, any of those role players. If you get an open look, you're going to have to make it, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on you to do that at home. So I think Toronto is in the driver's seat, but no one knows if guys are going to make shots in a big moment when they get them, and I think that's actually going to be what we're talking about after the game. If those guys step up, I think the Raptors win. If they struggle one more time, I think Philly has a great chance to go in there and get that.
Legs, I'm always trying to figure out the Jimmy Butler part of this because I think some nights he's the most important guy because I think he's got more of an edge to him than anybody on that roster. And then sometimes having an edge can be too much where he gets frustrated. He's like, all right, I'm going to do this on my own. When you're watching him, when can you get a sense that, like, it's going to be the best version of him for the Sixers?
It's definitely how his first few touches, and I saw it right away in Game 6. The very first 2 or 3 times he caught the ball, he had a purpose and that he was going to try to be aggressive and score the basketball. And one was a weak side cut where he came from all the way from the left wing, slashed through the lane, caught it, and shot it like an off-balance runner off the glass. But he almost premeditated in that moment that he was going to attack. He got into the post early in the game. I love when Jimmy Butler plays that way. And, you know, during the regular season, it was almost as if some nights he just felt like we have so many weapons that I don't need to force anything and I'll be here late for us. And at the time, I thought that was a very dangerous formula for this team because you're not going to be able to flip that switch if you're Jimmy Butler every night if you haven't had a great rhythm to that point in the game and then come through with big-time buckets when you need it. So I like when Jimmy Butler gets involved early. I think it gets him into a better rhythm, and then you're more confident he will be there later in the fourth quarter, which is a time in the game that he loves. But you can't be quiet in the first half and always expect to have that adrenaline rush where you're going to start making shots. I love the way he came out in Game 6. And right now he has captivated this city, and I think a lot of people there were also questioning at times how he could be so quiet. That has not been the case in this series. He has been sensational, and they would not be here. This series would have been long over if it wasn't for the way Jimmy Butler has played offensively, particularly with Embiid and Simmons struggling the way that they have.
So we get 2 Game 7s on Sunday for sure, and maybe a third depending on what happens tonight in Houston. So let's get there. Give me the sort of X's and O's in your mind. No Kevin Durant tonight. How does that change the game for the Rockets and the Warriors?
Well, look, you're going to have to see the Warriors play offensively similar style to what they did before Durant got there. And I think sometimes we overstate how much Kevin Durant isos and holds the ball and affects their offensive flow. I don't think it's fair sometimes. I think sometimes he bails them out, honestly. But the Warriors have some things they do offensively that you haven't seen as much, simply because when it hits Kevin Durant's hands, he's a scorer. And I'm talking about things like Steph Curry, when he passes and then chases the basketball to get it back from the same guy he passed it to on a dribble handoff. Haven't seen a lot of that. The guard split action, where he and Clay are on the same side of the floor. They enter the ball to the post, whether that's Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, whoever that may be, and then they run that screening action on the same side. One guy dives, one guy pops. It's one of the most difficult things in basketball to defend. If you don't communicate that switch perfectly, one of those two guys is going to get open. That's what they lived on before Kevin Durant got there. You don't see as much of it. I think you're going to see a whole lot of that in this game. You're going to see Draymond Green handle the ball an awful lot in the middle of the floor with dribble handoffs for both of those guys, screening action. Clay and Steph on the baseline running those figure eights when the down screens coming out opposite sides. So it's a lot more player movement. It's a lot more two of the best shooters we've ever seen being super active, putting pressure on the defense to communicate things and not having the luxury of a guy that will catch it and be able to now back a guy down and turn and shoot over them. So it's going to be fun to watch, and I'm really curious to see if Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and the Warriors team can pull this off.
Legs, that Warriors core, Curry, Thompson, Draymond Green, they won before Kevin Durant arrived. They may be asked to win if he leaves. How much do you think, as competitors, that group is going to relish being able to go out here and close out a series without Durant, and maybe remind people and remind themselves that this is a special group here, and they may be asked to do it in the future without him?
Well, Woj, you must have been up here in the hallways lurking, because I just had this conversation before I came on. And look, obviously you're never happy if a teammate goes down or gets hurt, but at the same time, absolutely, there's a part of you that as a competitor, you have pride and you want to go out there and show what you're capable of doing. They did it before he got there. They may have to do it after he left, as you alluded to. And right now in the moment, they're going to have an opportunity to do that one more time. I think they dodged the biggest bullet in Game 5, getting through that moment, because the shock of watching Kevin Durant walk off that floor, not just for the team, but in that building, no one could breathe, because everybody thought that was Kevin Durant's Achilles. In the moment, you're worried about that. And now here come the Houston Rockets. They cut it to 1-2 different times. I really thought Golden State was in deep trouble, where Houston may, have a chance to go home and close this series out. To give them credit, Steph Curry made a couple big shots. Clay made a big one. Draymond Green made a big one. And Kevon Looney, they wouldn't be here with a 3-2 lead without what Kevon Looney did in that game. So they dodged the biggest bullet. Now they can take a breath and they can refocus and play a style that we were accustomed to, that captivated the country before Kevin Durant got there. And there's no question that they have a lot of pride in wanting to go out there and prove they can get this done.
Should be a really interesting night in every conceivable way. Timmy Legs, thanks a million for coming in and doing this with us this morning. Have a great weekend and enjoy the games. We'll take a short break. Still, as we go, can the Warriors survive without KD? That seems to be the question of the moment. Stephen A. Smith will chime in with his view as we continue next.